What's up guys, my name's Amanda.
My name is Emily. Welcome to our channel, Gale Force Twins.
Today we're going to show you 3 different ways to rig a bait for bottom fishing. Today's bait of choice, we're going to be using Ballyhoo, so we're going to show you 3 different ways to rig a Ballyhoo for bottom fishing. But you can do this with other baits, but Ballyhoo would really be my prime go-to bait for bottom fishing. The reason we like Ballyhoo so much is because it seems like you can always get it. If you're fishing the Florida Keys or really anywhere in Florida, any tackle store is going to have Ballyhoo. Any reef, any snapper is going to eat Ballyhoo. It is a great bait to have all around. First, we are going to show you 3 different ways to cut your bait. Then we're going to show you 3 different ways to rig your bait. When you're using Ballyhoo for bait, you always want to break the beak off. It doesn't matter what you're doing, always break the beak off. That's something we do with every single way that we cut our Ballyhoo. Option number 1 is going to be a butterflied Ballyhoo or a butterflied bait. To butterfly your bait, we're going to take our knife and we're going to stick it right through the top of the backbone. I'm going to file that backbone down to separate the meat from the backbone. Here's the meat, here's the backbone. We're going to do the same thing on both sides. This time I'm going to find the backbone from up through the belly, find that backbone, and follow it down. This is what you would call a butterfly bait. So the meat is off of the backbone. What I like to do, I always like to take the next step, completely break that backbone out, throw it overboard, and that is a deboned Ballyhoo. So that's the difference from a deboned Ballyhoo and a butterflied Ballyhoo. Deboned, it's not gonna have any bones. It's gonna flutter real nicely in the water. A butterfly Ballyhoo is just as nice, but the backbone stays in the fish. Your next option for bait is going to be a Ballyhoo plug. Very simple and straightforward. Cut the head off, toss it overboard, cut the tail off, toss it overboard. That's your Ballyhoo plug. Your third option is going to be Ballyhoo chunks. Now when you're chunking Ballyhoo, especially if you're using it for pitch baits for mahi, you can go ahead and keep the tail. We'll take a 1-inch chunk from the body, another 1 or 2-inch chunk. You can also keep the head if you like. I like to get as much meat as I can by the head and toss the head, but you can keep it and you can use it. It doesn't have to be wasted. The first bait we're going to rig is the deboned Ballyhoo. I'm going to show you the deboned or butterflied Ballyhoo, whichever way you choose to do it. I'm going to show you how I would rig it, the type of rig I would put it on. Coming straight off of my reel and my rod, I have a wind-on leader of 40 pound, around 10 feet of it. On this wind-on leader, we're going to have our egg sinker. So this egg sinker, today we're using 6 ounces. Depending on the water depth you're in, you might need to use 16 ounces, you might need to use 4 ounces. From the egg sinker, we're going to go straight to a ball bearing swivel. Sometimes you will need a bead between your sinker and your swivel if the holes in your sinker are large and they're going to get caught on the swivel. Now this egg sinker has very tiny holes, so we don't need a bead. From our egg sinker to our swivel, we go to our leader, which is also 40 pound. Today we're using 10 to 15 feet of 40-pound leader, and at the very end of it we have a 6/0 circle hook. You could use a 6/0 or a 7/0 circle hook is what I would choose to use. We're going to take our deboned Ballyhoo and we're going to take our circle hook and go up underneath the jaw. You want to come out the head as much to the center of it as possible, just like that. I would probably fish my deboned ballyhoo on a wreck or a reef. Probably the deep reef, I'm thinking 200 feet of water. If you're fishing the wreck, drifting the bottom, that's probably when I would go with the deboned ballyhoo, when I would use the rig with the egg sinker, the swivel, a long leader, and a hook. That is when I would use my deboned ballyhoo in that rig. The next bait we are going to rig is the plug. So the plug is something that I would really probably be fishing on the reef, the shallow reef, anywhere from 20 feet of water or even 5 feet of water, depending on where you're fishing out back, all the way out front to 90 feet of water. But the plug is something I would probably choose to put on a knocker rig because I want it to sit on the bottom. A knocker rig is very simple and straightforward. We have an egg sinker, a bead, and a 7/0 circle hook. Now the knocker rig, what you want it to do is you want it to just sit on the bottom and bounce. And it gets the name knocker rig because it's supposed to be doing this on the bottom, and your bait is right here. The knocker rig is a great rig. I love it. It's a great go-to, and the idea is you want to sit on the bottom. So you just want to make sure you're using a heavy enough sinker that your bait is on the bottom. When you're rigging a plug, I like to put the hook through the top side or bottom side of the meat, not necessarily through the middle, because then it's just going to drag in the water like this. You really want it to be nice and streamlined. So always go through the dark side of the meat. That is where the backbone is. And I'm just going to take my circle hook, pop it through, and that's how I would fish my knocker rig. My favorite way to use the plug is for mangrove snappers at the reef in 30 feet of water. I would use 20-pound leader, my probably a 5 or 6 ounce egg sinker, a bead, a 7/0 circle hook, and my plug. That's my favorite way to fish for mangrove snappers in 30 feet of water. I almost forgot to mention, for your plug, when you're fishing your plug on a knocker rig, I would use anywhere between 20-pound and 40-pound leader, depending on the species you're targeting, the water depth, and what you might be catching. The last bait I'm going to rig is the ballyhoo chunk. It's a very similar method to the knocker rig, but I would probably rig it on a snapper jig, something a little bit smaller and lighter, something that might drift back in the current, get close to the bottom, hit the bottom, but you can adjust your snapper jig depending on where you want your bait to fish in the water column. When rigging a ballyhoo chunk, all you're going to do is take your hook. Once again, you want to go through the dark side of the meat. That's where the bones are, to really keep that meat on your hook. And I would use a 20-pound leader. I would fish this in, once again, anywhere from 30 feet to maybe even 90 feet of water. You can adjust the size of your jig depending on the water depth and the current. I would say that the plug and the chunk of ballyhoo are interchangeable between the two rigs. You could easily put a chunk on a knocker rig and a plug on a jig. But just remember, if you're fishing in the Gulf of Mexico, snapper jigs like this are illegal. So you're gonna have to use a knocker rig. That is 3 different ways to rig a bait for bottom fishing, specifically ballyhoo. Those are the 3 ways I would do it, the 3 different locations I would do it. We hope this video was helpful, and if it was, go ahead, leave it in the comments. If you guys rig your baits differently, let us know. If there's anything else you want to see, drop it in the comments. Thanks for following, guys. Go ahead, follow Gale Force Twins on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.